Welcome back to Crosstalk, where all things are considered. I'm Peter Lavelle. To remind you, we're discussing a possible Western strike against Syria. Okay, Michael, I'd like to go back to you in Washington. You mentioned before the break international law. Where was the international law with Iraq? Again, that's how I started this program. This is a bad movie, and it's being repeated again. We haven't learned anything? The U.S. hasn't learned anything?
Right. We like to enforce international law when it's convenient. Certainly when we're dealing with Iran, we care about the NPT and that Iran is flouting the NPT. But when it comes to UN inspectors in Iraq or Syria, we're keen to flout that. We're also not keen to support the ICC. I mean, we've sent folks, Bashir in Sudan and Kenyatta in Kenya, we've sent folks to the ICC for less than what Assad has committed in Syria. Certainly that would be an appropriate path to follow, but also international diplomacy. My point about only engaging Russia, why aren't we engaging Iran and Hezbollah and other stakeholders that could have leverage over Syria? I mean, even Israel President Shimon Peres saying we should engage the Arab League. We haven't engaged the Arab League extensively on Syria. We did a little bit on Libya, and then Arab League, once they kind of gave the green light, retracted that green light. But we haven't engaged the Organization for Islamic Conference either. If we are serious about de-escalating violence in Syria, we would do all of that. We're not.
Okay, Ed, you know, who do they want to win? The Obama administration, who do they want to win in Syria? Jihadists? I mean, that's the other side of the coin here. I mean, I don't get that. Are they going to kill them too? Declare war against them as well, illegally?
They're trying to play the game where they're not taking sides. They're just responding to the chemical weapons use.
Well, what about the 100,000 people that were killed?
You know, the Israelis.
Hey, what about the 100,000 people that were killed?
It's just this 1,300 or this 300. You know, that's the political games they play. You know, it's weapons of mass destruction. The Tsarnaev brothers, they're alleged to have used weapons of mass destruction. You know, and those were pressure cookers. So it can really mean whatever you want it to mean. And if for some reason now's the time that they want to do it, they'll do it. But hopefully it's not what they want to do. So, you know, we'll see. We'll see what happens.
Let me ask you, yes, on the same thing in Damascus. I mean, the other side, is this the side that the United States and its Western allies want to empower?
I don't think their problem is really Syria per se, as much as they're really becoming hysterical for what's appearing to be a new world order starting to happen or starting to shape in the Middle East. They cannot bear the idea that their alliance that they decided to take in the early 2000s towards 2010 with the extreme Islamist governments and installed there some puppet governments around the Middle East, that alliance is not really working well, and it's at now serious risk of collapsing. There's the alliance of Syria with Iran, with the resistance group or league, let's say, in the Middle East, that is really prevailing, and they realize that if Syria doesn't fall as they planned it, it will backlash on them, and already the American leverage in the area will start to shake. We've seen that happening in several countries in the Middle East where they've lost they lost their leverage. Clearly, they at the start employed Qatar in the Syrian conflict. The Qataris didn't perform well. The Americans were in a bit of confusion. Then the Saudis put a bid to lead. Then they said, yeah, fine, why not? As long as you can get us out of the Syrian crisis. Now they're not convinced that even the Saudis, with their full measures that they're deploying to Syria, including the jihadists, the money, the media warfare on Syria, that the Saudis will probably be able to achieve their goals. So now they have to resort to military force to save their position in the Middle East. They know that if Syria succeeds in surviving this war against it from all fronts, Syria will only be a nucleus to a snowball that will start probably growing towards other areas in the world. Well, it will start redrawing the map of a new world order. The Americans now are probably very concerned about such a scenario, and they want to stop it by force, by hysteria, by any means that are available to them now.
Michael, would you like to expand upon that? Because it's a very interesting point. The Americans are just losing their grip on the region, and they have to show who's boss.
Excellent analysis by Dr. Abdullah. I mean, we think we can cleanly go in, remove the bad guy, and somehow the country is going to be better off. But we see Iraq's current violence as illustrative of how impossible that is and how deleterious our approach is. We certainly see that in Afghanistan. We're seeing that in Libya. We thought we could support a very cleanly defined, with clean parameters, rebel group in Libya, and that we funnel arms and money to them and them only, that they'll somehow be able to stand up and overthrow Gaddafi. We're doing the same in Syria, thinking we can support their council, their national council, in standing up. And if we just legitimate them and officially recognize them, then we can proceed, and it will be clean. We'll bomb, we'll go out, everything will be fine. The Syrian people will be liberated. But when you have so many case studies, I mean, Yeltsin was kind to the president early on in this conversation, because I think the president is actually as war-hungry as the predecessor, President Bush. Right. I mean, thankfully, we have some more rational voices in the Senate. Senator Kaine, Senator Jack Reed tweeting last night saying that they don't believe a military option is a good option. We shouldn't pursue it. It would exacerbate relations between the West and the Muslim world. So there are some saner voices in the Senate, but I think the White House is very much on the warpath. We've seen it in several countries, and that list is growing.
Ed, what do you think about that? I mean, what does Obama want to gain? To show that he's a great war president here? Because, you know, Egypt is a terrible mess right now. His foreign policy is in tatters right now. He can't get much done at home. I mean, this is a bizarre way to leave your mark.
I mean, the thing is, it's what foreign policy, you know? I mean, there's a debate to be had about the differences between George Bush's wars and Barack Obama's wars. But, you know, right or wrong, George Bush, there was a certain kind of understanding of this kind of purpose, you know, and it may have been weird and off and wrong and destructive, but there was this idea of, like, this is the purpose of American foreign policy. We're going to make Iraq believe what we want them to believe. We're going to make Afghanistan believe what we want them to believe. Here, it's just kind of you're just kind of stumbling from one place to another, you know, Libya, Egypt, Syria, with no kind of purpose, no idea of what the strategic interest is. And it's kind of seeing the same thing here, because what does it benefit? What's it going to benefit America to send a bunch of cruise missiles to Syria because of this chemical weapons use? You know, if you talk about a wag the dog situation, unfortunately, we're in a period of American history where we don't need to wag the dog. You know, you have Miley Cyrus twerking at the VMAs. No one's talking about Syria on Monday. So the idea, or whatever other scandals there are, that this one might try to cover. So it's hard to understand what the thinking in the White House is. You know, you understand the neoconservative cabal there, your Samantha Powers, your whoever, Hillary Clinton, I guess, is not there anymore, John Kerry to a lesser extent. So you kind of understand that they kind of want to be the big good guy who comes in and drops bombs till the people stop killing other people. But I don't see what it is. You know, in Iraq, you understood it was wrong, but you understood what George Bush's plan in Iraq, why he wanted to go. You know, you might have disagreed with it, it was wrong, but at least there was something there where you can say, I kind of understand where he's coming from. In this case, it's just really hard to tell what they're doing other than grasping at straws. Yes, it's really just, and I'm not saying this just to slam the president, I'm saying it just really does not seem like they have articulated any kind of foreign policy whatsoever, and are just stumbling blindly
Let's go to Damascus here. Can you give me the sentiment of what the people of the city of Damascus think about recent statements coming out of Western capitals? I mean, are they expecting cruise missiles?
I would like you to be here, Peter, and go around the city and speak to people. People seriously have strong morale, and I'm not here exaggerating. I really have strong morale. They know that America will at some point attack them. They know that they've been at war with Israel for 60 years, and they know that all these Arab puppet countries in the region are instruments and small tools to Israel. They know that American foreign policy is manipulated by Israel. So they're not any surprise that they may receive airstrikes. They have seen it before. People here, the fathers or the sons, have lived wars with Israel and have lived the aggression and the embargo from America and from other Western states. So the morale is really high. What they believe in is only their resilience and only their own resources, and the fact that they've survived wars before, and they are committed to the Syrian army. They know that they are all together with the means that are available at the disposal of the Syrian government right now, without any foreign aid, without begging for any unexpected help or conditional help from any other state. They know that with the resources they have at their disposal, they will be able to survive, and they will be able to actually change or change the map of any such war. It may transcend. It may well transcend outside the Syrian borders, but it certainly will not result in the defeat of the Syrians. They were never defeated, and that's
an interesting point. If I could go to Michael in Washington, in Obama's world, do you have to destroy Syria to save Syria? Do you know what I'm getting at? I mean, they're just going to, because they have to destroy the entire state to win.
Right. This goes back to Dr. Abdullah's point, where the neocons in the West and even the Liberal Party, even among the Democratic Party, think that we can bomb our way to freedom or bomb our way to democracy. That's what we've done throughout the Middle East. We've left a legacy of that in the last 100 years, certainly more poignantly in the last 30 to 40 to 50 years. Listen, Martin Dempsey, Joint Chiefs of Staff Chairman, saying that we shouldn't pursue military options. I think we should keep his words in mind. We should also recognize that we've used chemical weapons before, too, certainly in Iraq, napalm and phosphorus, using chemical weapons, then supporting Saddam's use of chemical weapons in Iran. That news came out recently. I mean, the way to go in Syria, I was in Damascus years ago, and the Japanese were looked favorably upon because they were investing in a lot of infrastructure in Syria, economic development, and the Syrian government, Syrian people appreciated that intervention. If we're going to intervene, let's think about really helping people beyond humanitarian aid, which we have to pursue, but helping people in a really substantive way. You know, in Iraq, the infrastructure is essentially the same as it was pre-invasion. We have not left that country, power, water, sanitation, etc., better off post-invasion.
All right, gentlemen.
The same thing's going to happen in
let's
Syria.
keep an eye on this story because events are moving very
off.
fast. Many thanks, Eddie, my guests in Damascus, Washington, and in New York.
The standoff in Syria could quickly ignite into a larger conflict, and the war has already killed over 100,000 people and forced over 6 million from their homes. American and Russian warships are both in the region, and each nation is supporting opposing sides in the conflict. Russia's last foreign military base outside the former Soviet Union is located inside Syria's borders. Members of al-Qaeda are known to be among the rebels being supported by the Obama administration. And like a Mexican standoff, the tragic conflict could go in any direction. Michael Scheuer is our guest today to provide insight and analysis into the crisis that is now growing in Syria. Welcome to WHDT, Michael.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you for having me.
Now, Michael, President Obama just recently stated he wants to go into the conflict. He wants to use military force in Syria. He's also said he will be seeking congressional approval to do so. If that happens, who will our military be fighting? Who will they be fighting in Syria? Who are the rebels?
Well, if they're going to fight Assad, then they're going to fight in favor of a group of people who have been rebelling against Assad, but whose military power to oppose Assad comes strictly from al-Qaeda and other mujahideen who have come to the area since the war in Syria began. So, in essence, I think Mr. Kucinich said the other day the Air Force will be flying cover for al-Qaeda.
And al-Qaeda against a sovereign government in Syria.
Right. Our Air Force will be supporting the same people whose brethren killed between Iraq and Afghanistan about 9,000 American soldiers and Marines, yes. The role they generally play, sir, al-Qaeda is an organization that's meant to support other people's insurgencies. They provide training, they provide weaponry, they provide most of all on-the-ground leadership, people who are experienced at the non-commissioned officer and field grade officer levels.
Troops on the ground are posting photographs of themselves holding signs over their faces in full uniform that says, "I will not fight alongside al-Qaeda. I did not sign up to fight in a Syrian civil war." What does that tell you about the actual boots on the ground, the individual fighting man, the U.S. soldier?
I think in the big picture, Gary, it tells you that none of us matter. There's no one in the United States among the populace, whether it's foot soldiers or infantry or Marines or the average voter, who make any difference. The decisions are going to be made by these congressmen and the president and the people who pay them off, Saudis, Israelis, in the American Jewish community. That's where the decision is going to be made.
To that, let's talk about those chemical weapons. Like I mentioned before, the BBC is reporting that those chemical weapons were in fact launched by the Assad regime. However, other reports are stating that they were actually launched from the rebels in an attempt to simply lure the United States into the conflict based on the president's line in the sand that he drew so many months ago. Who launched these this chemical attack?
You know, I really don't know, Gary. My own suspicion is it may have been Assad who did it, but the real question is, so what? This is a war that Assad is waging against people who started a war against the legitimate government of Syria. And at the end of the day, no matter how many people have been killed so far, not a single American has been killed, not a single American interest has been hurt, and very few American dollars have been wasted on this conflict. This is clearly a case of of self-determination, if you will. And if 100,000 dead people wasn't enough to justify an international intervention, certainly 1,400 dead because of a gas attack does not justify it either.